All right, so welcome to another deep dive. We all know how it is these days, right? Headlines and doom scrolling. I mean, who has the time?
And even if you did have the time to really get into something, where would you even start? So that's where we come in, right? We pick a book, really dig into it, and give you those golden nuggets, what you really need to know.
Exactly. It's all about understanding, right? And today we're looking at the Almanac of Practical Magic. Now, I know when you hear practical magic, you might think, okay, is this like a dusty old spell book?
Right, or like something you'd find in, a fantasy novel.
Yeah, exactly. But from what we've seen, this book is actually trying to do something pretty interesting. It's trying to connect the really old ideas about magic with how we live today in the modern world.
Like a bridge between then and now, sort of.
Exactly. And in this deep dive, we want to lay it all out for you. We want to show you what this almanac is really about, who it's for, and what you can actually expect to find inside. And most importantly, we want to help you figure out if this book is something you'd actually be interested in, if it speaks to your curiosity about magic and spirituality.
It's all about giving you enough info so you can decide for yourself. No pressure, right?
Right, no pressure. So let's jump right in. The first thing that really stood out to us is that the Almanac of Practical Magic presents magic as something that's alive and well, not just some ancient thing that's lost its relevance. It treats magic as a real practice, a real discipline, something that's relevant to our lives today.
It's both an ancient art, but also something that's very modern, and that's a pretty cool way to look at it, I think.
Definitely. Now, another interesting thing is how the book defines magic. It doesn't really go for the fantastical, supernatural stuff. It's more about understanding these unseen forces that are all around us, like energy fields and patterns and the laws of the universe.
It's less about poof, magic happens, and more about working with those energies intentionally, like tuning into the interconnectedness of everything.
Right, so it's not about just waving a wand and changing things instantly. It's about aligning yourself with those deeper energies.
Exactly. And that's a really important point because the book really emphasizes that magic is about building a relationship with these subtle but powerful forces. It's about learning to work with them consciously to shape our world.
And this is where things get really fascinating. The book doesn't just stop at the theory. It actually positions magic as a tool for personal growth, for healing, even for spiritual evolution.
Yeah.
But it doesn't present it as a quick fix, does it?
No, not at all. The Almanac is really clear that using magic for these purposes requires a thoughtful and responsible approach. It stresses the importance of discernment, being able to think critically about what you're doing and the potential consequences. It also talks a lot about ethics, considering the impact of your actions on yourself and others. And get this, it even encourages intellectual rigor, approaching magic with a curious and analytical mind.
So it's not about blind faith. It's about engaging with magic in a mindful and intelligent way.
Exactly. And part one of the book, which is what we're focusing on in this deep dive, lays out this foundation for understanding and applying magic in a balanced and purposeful way. It sets the stage for the practical stuff that comes later.
Okay, so with that foundation in mind, who do you think this book is really for? Who would find it most valuable?
Well, based on what we see in part one, it seems like it could appeal to a pretty wide range of people who are drawn to magic and spirituality. First off, it's great for anyone who wants to understand the basic principles of practical magic. The book digs into these subtle energy systems like the aura, which it describes as an energy field around the body, the chakras, which are these energy centers within the body, and the etheric body, which is like a blueprint for our physical form. It even introduces the idea of aura reading as a technique for self-assessment and healing. So if you've ever been curious about these invisible energies and how they affect us, this book could be a great place to start.
Yeah, it definitely provides a framework for understanding something that can feel very abstract and elusive.
Right. Another big area it covers is the creation of sacred space. It guides readers on how to set up altars, use elemental symbols, and even consecrate their tools, which can be made from materials like metal, wood, stone, or crystal. What's really interesting is that it provides specific rituals for consecrating these tools using the power of the four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. So if you're into creating a dedicated space for your spiritual practice, this section is super relevant.
That's something I know a lot of people are interested in, creating that kind of personal sanctuary.
Absolutely. And the book doesn't stop there. It also gets into psychic development. It introduces practices like meditation, breath work for focus and concentration, stillness exercises, and even how to develop your intuitive senses, things like clairvoyance, which is about seeing beyond the physical, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, and clairsentience, which is about sensing and feeling. It even mentions exercises for strengthening what's called the third eye, which is often associated with intuition.
So if you're looking to tap into your intuition, this book offers some basic techniques and a way to understand those senses.
Exactly. And beyond the more general psychic stuff, the almanac gets into working with your own personal energy. It covers techniques for directing energy within your body and even talks about how to build confidence for manifesting your intentions. So it's not just about understanding these energies, it's about learning how to use them to create the life you want.
That's a really empowering aspect, isn't it? Taking control of your own energy.
Absolutely. And then the book expands into elemental magic, which is a really central theme. It explains how to work with the energies of earth, water, air, and fire, both in your everyday life and in ritual. And what's super interesting is that it introduces the alchemical stages, nigredo, albedo, citrinitas, and rubedo. These are basically stages of transformation, both internal and external, that are linked to the elements. So it's suggesting that working with the elements can actually help you grow and evolve spiritually.
Now, alchemy, that's a word that always gets people's attention.
Hmm.
So it's basically saying there's a parallel between working with these physical elements and our own inner development.
Exactly. There's this deep connection between our inner world and the outer world, and the elements act as a bridge between the two. And for those who want to take things to the next level, the book shows how to incorporate elemental magic into rituals for empowerment and balance.
So we're going from understanding the basics of the elements to actually using them in a more structured and intentional way.
Right. And that leads us into basic spellcraft. The Almanac introduces the idea of elemental correspondences and how to apply them in spells. For example, earth spells are often used for things like abundance and grounding. Water spells are connected to intuition and divination. Air spells work with things like incense and sound for communication and clarity. And fire spells are often used for empowerment and transformation. So it gives you specific examples of how to harness these elemental energies for different purposes.
So it's giving you the building blocks, the understanding, and then showing you how to put it all together.
Exactly. And it even goes deeper into alchemy, talking about working with the elemental energies of metals and crystals, specifically mentioning copper. So it's getting into the unique properties of different materials.
Yeah, copper is often associated with conductivity and specific energetic qualities.
Right. And for those who like to get hands-on, the book also covers how to make elemental potions using herbs. So it's combining herbalism with magic, which is really cool. For example, you might use earth herbs for grounding, water herbs for intuition, air herbs for mental clarity, and fire herbs for boosting energy.
That's a really interesting blend of the natural world and magical practice.
Definitely. And for those who are really drawn to ritual and spellcraft, the Almanac provides a whole section on the structure of rituals, how to set up a sacred space, including your circle, altar, and tools and techniques for purification and protection. It also talks about centering yourself and aligning your energy with your intention. And it even gets into timing your rituals based on planetary days and the phases of the moon, new, waxing, full, and waning.
So it's not just about the ritual itself, it's about aligning your actions with these larger cosmic energies?
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. It goes on to discuss different types of rituals, specifically healing rituals and cleansing rituals. And for those who like to document their experiences, it strongly encourages keeping a magical journal to record and reflect on your practice.
That's such an important practice, taking the time to really think about what you're doing and how it's affecting you.
Absolutely. And it covers other magical practices too, like candle magic, where you use candles for things like releasing negativity, attracting what you want, or creating balance. It talks about using herbal teas, potions, and baths for magical purposes. And it even mentions using crystals like amethyst, rose quartz, and citrine, explaining their properties and how to incorporate them into your practice.
These are all things that are relatively accessible, so it's not like you need to have a ton of specialized knowledge to get started.
Exactly. And for those who are interested in astrology, the book covers how to work with the energies of the sun, moon, and planets, and how to time your rituals accordingly. It also introduces esoteric symbols like the pentacle, the ankh, and the triquetra, and talks about sacred geometry. So it's bringing in these layers of symbolism and cosmic connection.
It's really enriching the practice with all these different elements.
Absolutely. And if you're looking for guidance beyond your own intuition, the Almanac also covers divination. It introduces tarot, including the major and minor arcana and basic spreads like the three-card spread and the Celtic cross. And it mentions other forms of divination like runes and scrying, which is like gazing into a reflective surface.
So it's using divination as a tool to support your magical work.
Precisely. And for those who are interested in more advanced practices, the book even touches on ceremonial magic, which is a more formal and ritualistic approach. It talks about the history and philosophy of ceremonial magic, the use of tools like the wand and chalice, the incorporation of sacred texts, prayers, chants, and even vibrational toning. It also briefly mentions things like astral projection, healing techniques, and working with nature spirits. So it's kind of opening the door to a whole other level of practice.
It sounds like it's pointing towards a more complex and potentially transformative path.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of astral projection, the book actually dedicates a whole section to it. It talks about the astral plane, what it is, the benefits and challenges, techniques for safe astral travel, encountering guides, exploring different locations on the astral plane, manipulating time, accessing past lives, and even understanding different realities.
That's a whole other world to explore, and I know it's something that fascinates a lot of people.
Absolutely. And bringing things back to the physical world, the book also covers self-healing techniques and rituals using things like affirmations, breath work, visualization, and even remote healing. And for those who are drawn to nature, it explores nature-based magic, connecting with the elements, working with natural cycles to influence the weather, honoring the seasons, and even working with planetary influences and elemental spirits.
This book is incredibly comprehensive. It covers so much ground.
It really does. And ultimately, it seems to be guiding readers towards living a magical life, integrating magic into everything they do. It talks about creating a magical home environment through cleansing and protection, incorporating magic into your daily routines through mindfulness, symbols, and affirmations, celebrating the seasons, staying grounded, and the importance of mentorship, self-reflection, and ethics in your magical journey.
So it's not just about doing magic, it's about being magical.
Exactly. And to make things even easier, the almanac includes appendices with quick reference guides for herbs and crystals, sample rituals and spells, and an overview of the moon phases and their correspondences. It also mentions that it has explanations of esoteric symbols and a reading list for further exploration.
Wow, it's like a one-stop shop for anyone interested in practical magic.
It really is. It's a fantastic resource for beginners and those who are more experienced.
So to bring it back to what we talked about at the beginning, it's clear that the Almanac of Practical Magic isn't just for seasoned practitioners. It's a really accessible and comprehensive guide for anyone who wants to learn about magic.
Absolutely. It's perfect for anyone who's curious, no matter where they are on their path.
And it does a great job of combining the theory
Hmm.
with the practical, so you get both the understanding and the tools you need to actually work with magic.
Exactly. It bridges that gap between the intellectual and the experiential, which is so important.
So if you're listening and any of this has sparked your interest, whether it's understanding energy fields, working with the elements, exploring spellcraft, or maybe even dipping your toes into astral projection, the Almanac of Practical Magic could be an amazing resource for you.
Definitely. It's a great guide for anyone who wants to explore the world of practical magic.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Almanac of Practical Magic. We hope this has given you a good overview of what the book is all about. Now, we want to leave you with this. What aspect of practical magic are you most drawn to? What calls to you the most? Maybe that's the perfect place to start your own deep dive. Until next time.